climate change. You're being lied to a lot. Just recently, I made a video all about climate warnings over time, one of the first of which appeared in newspapers over 100 years ago. So why haven't we listened? Because we've been given conflicting information. It's in some very powerful companies' interests that we don't act on climate change. And after all, what better way of stopping having to clean up your act than convincing the world that you don't have a dirty act to clean up in the first place? Oh my god, fossil fuels! Did you just break my priceless Ming jar? No. Okay, so what's your explanation? And we climate scientists have been battling misleading or outright false information for decades, long before fake news was making headlines. Well then, why are you talking about it now then? Well, because 3 bodies of evidence have recently given unique insight into how we've been lied to and how we're still being misled today. There's now abundant evidence that fossil fuel companies knew about climate change and then knowingly lied about it. But a new study looks at this pattern for electric utilities in the United States, electric utilities just being electric power companies. In the 80s and 90s, evidence was building up that we were changing the climate, and more researchers and research bodies were warning of the dangers if we didn't limit emissions. And electric power generation is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. No, I am not responsible for the jar breaking. Well, our top scientist says it's got your fingerprints all over it, electric power company. So how did electric utilities respond back then? By sowing doubt. I guess there's just not enough evidence to know who broke it. Yes, there is. Well, either way, who are we to say whether broken bits of glass all over the floor is actually harmful? Wow, they make a great point. What's really interesting is that over time, this messaging shifted from doubt to outright denial. So as the scientific evidence got stronger and stronger, so did the counteroffensive from electric utilities. The jar was always broken, but I've got photographic evidence of the jar being fine. Well, it was surely just a gust of wind or something. You know, nature. But the window is closed. Wow, it's just so hard to know who to believe. If you want to know what this messaging looked like in practice, here are some classic examples of denial and of doubt, just really trying to avoid taking any responsibility for what the climate science was saying. That is until around the year 2000, when there was a marked shift. No, electric utilities didn't start admitting their failures. They started arguing for delaying action. Okay, I accept that I broke the jar. Great, now clean it up. Oh, I'd love to. It's just that it would be so expensive. Oh yes, that's true. Brooms do cost money. But we can't just have shards of glass everywhere. Well look, if you care so much about broken glass, I suggest you start next door. My neighbor China breaks jars all the time. It's interesting reading this study as someone who's worked on climate change for so long, because I'm so familiar with each of these strategies, both from traditional media. Next up is the man we found on the street who says that all climate scientists are wrong, and from social media. If climate change is real, why is my freezer still cold? So enough of the past. What about the present? Well, fossil fuel companies today talk a big game about just how much they care about the environment.
In the UK, 1.4 million households use 100% renewable electricity from Shell.
But there's a catch. There's a huge mismatch between their words and their actions. Here at Fossil Fuel Corp, we care just as much as you about broken jars. Wow, that is really reassuring. Which is why we're leading the way on a transition to a world where the ground isn't covered in glass. truly inspiring stuff. They've just broken another jar. Oh my god, you're such a cynic. Research from InfluenceMap compared the public messaging of major fossil fuel companies with their actions. It found that a whopping 60% of messaging contained green claims, which might lead you to believe that that was something that these companies were taking seriously. That is until you actually look at where they're spending their money. Just 12% of spending was going on low carbon technologies. It's like whitewashing, but to make these companies look more green. If only there was a good word for that. To make matters worse, or I guess at this point I should say even worse, because there have already been a lot of worsening things. So to make matters even worse, the research found that these companies have a network of industry associations that are actively resisting policy that would be consistent with the Paris Climate Agreement. So whereas before the lies were about climate change itself, now the lies are about caring about climate change. But either way, the impact is the same: preventing climate action. And there's even more of this nonsense in our third batch of evidence. This time, internal communications of fossil fuel companies have been released as part of a US congressional hearing. These show just how big the differences are between public messaging and internal communication. Take Shell, who have publicly committed to net zero by 2050, which sounds amazing until you read the internal memo, which warns employees that they should never imply, suggest, or leave it open to possible misinterpretation that net zero is a Shell goal or target. After all, Shell has no immediate plans to move to a net zero emissions portfolio over the next couple of decades. It's been similar doublespeak for climate solutions. Exxon has been pushing algae-based biofuels as an amazing climate change fighting tech for years, but then behind closed doors has fully just admitted that this technology is decades away from the scale we need. It's not all bad though. In 2020, Shell tweeted asking what individuals can do to fight climate change, slightly overlooking what they can do as an individual fossil fuel company. For some strange reason, this tweet was widely ridiculed, and an internal comms memo acknowledged that this tweet was pretty tone deaf. We are, after all, in a tweet like this, implying that others need to sacrifice without focusing on ourselves. It's good to know that these companies sometimes have a little self-awareness. Now, once again, to someone who's worked on climate change, none of this is particularly surprising. Our whole careers we've been having to deal with this denial, doubt, delay, and of course, greenwashing. But there's still something striking about seeing so much evidence for it laid out in the cold light of day. So where do we go from here? Well, we need to give fossil fuel companies a taste of their own medicine: doubt, denial, and delay. We need to treat the communications of fossil fuel companies and electric utilities with the doubt that it deserves, as a cynical attempt to avoid taking responsibility. We need to deny the idea that these companies want to become a part of the solution, since over these past decades they've just shifted their language rather than shifting their actual business. And we need to delay any and all fossil fuel infrastructure indefinitely as we build ourselves the livable future that these companies have for so long tried to steal from us. Right, that is it. I've had enough of all your glass shattering. It's time to clean up your act or get out the room. Now, this may surprise you, but I don't actually have the communications budget of a major fossil fuel company. I also don't put ads on my videos, and so if you want to help me make videos long into the future, you might want to check out my Patreon. And if you don't want to check that out, then just by liking, commenting, and subscribing, you're already helping me out hugely. Okay, until next time, bye.